Hey guys, so let's get started with this balayage. You can see Millie's hair before and I'll go ahead and get started. So when doing a balayage, I usually go off of wherever they part and I take the section pretty far back past the crown of the head, and I do diagonal forward sections. So you can see my sections are a couple inches thick, and then I cut those into subsections. When doing a balayage, I usually start in the center and work product up towards the top of the hair. There are some times where I do have to start on the top, and that's usually if there's a ton of baby hairs and I need to control them right away. I was trying to show how much product, but the camera didn't pick it up well, but that's okay. So when I do a balayage, saturation is key. I want to get that outside layer looking super white, which means I know it will build a good shell and get maximum lightening. So here's where I was talking. Millie has a ton of baby hairs in the front, so I did have to start higher and work my way down, only because if I didn't, those baby hairs would have went everywhere. Behind that money piece, I do leave a little bit of depth, and that really does help that front piece pop. I do a lot of tugging on the hair, so I like to have good tension when I'm painting, but I do let the hair relax so that I can see where it's gonna fall naturally. So you can see I have good tension. I'm gonna go ahead and start building that product right there in the center and work my way up. So for this balayage, I did use Schwarzkopf's premium clay lightener with 40 volume. Now, most of the time I only paint on top if they like dimension. If I was wanting like maximum brightness, I would have painted the underneath as well. But I like having that depth because I feel like it really makes the blonde pop. So you can see her last retouch where it's always a little bit deeper at the root, and that's normal with a clay lightener. Unless they have really light hair, you're not going to get a super bright lift all the way to the root. So this is the section that would sit on top of that money piece. I don't go as high as I would with the rest of the balayage, just because I want that depth so that money piece pops. All of those little baby hairs you see up at the root, those are totally fine. I feel like they add to the blur. You don't really notice them at all once it's all rinsed out and toned. There's not really any visible marking of them being there. I just feel like they just help give a little bit of blur. So it's okay if you have those little baby hairs standing up right there at the root. So this is a pretty large section. You can either break a section that big in two, but I feel like I can control it. So I went ahead with one, and I'm just dusting the lightener upwards. I use the tip, like a corner section of my brush mostly. I do use a bigger section when I'm first applying product, and then I dust up just with a corner of my brush. And I am using a Firmar balayage brush. You want to make sure you have enough saturation so that the hair does get light enough. I know on her hair, I just only had a couple packets of product, so I was a little bit less generous than I normally would be, but it still gave plenty of lift. Also, when I'm in the salon, I do like to have the saran wrap between each section to maximize lift, and I only have one big roll of saran wrap at home, and it's super hard to cut, so I was unable to do it between each section. You want to go ahead and keep that tension good, the hair nice and taut so that the product easily smudges upwards. I'm not really showing the ends of her hair because I'm not lightening her last 4 to 6 inches because she has a previous balayage. So this is really just a retouch and to lighten the last retouch I did. She's a natural level 5 and her hair does lift pretty well. So I went ahead and just covered that entire section with saran wrap. I'm not worried about it bleeding onto each other because the clay lightener will create a shell. So I just continued onto this side, same technique, and worked my way up. You can see there the darker pieces from her last balayage, so I really want to make sure I get enough product on those guys and then work it up. Sometimes when doing a balayage, I'll do V's or W's, but if I just want to get pretty bright and I want it to be pretty high up in the hair, I will take everything up almost like a highlight where it all does kind of go up to the same section. But it's so diffused right there at the root area that you're not going to get a harsh line of demarcation. So this will be her money piece section for this side. Millie has a ton of baby hairs. They're always pretty tough to work with. But I do like to start on that front piece before the rest of the section. If I was going to go over her ends with the clay lightener and to get them a little bit brighter, I would probably use the clay lightener in maybe 20 volume. If it was pretty dark still, maybe 30, but with hers, I feel like it was bright enough where I could probably go in with 20 volume on the ends, but she really doesn't need it. Her hair does fade out to a really nice, like sandy blonde. So I have a couple more sections here on this side, and then we'll continue on to the back. I also only mix a little bit of product at a time, and I did cut out the times where I was remixing, but I like the clay lightener to stay fresh because I feel like it really does lose power if you are mixing too much at one time. By the time you get to the other section or the other side of the head, I feel like the power is cut in half. So I did remix, but I didn't show it in the video. Okay, so I'm just about done with this section, and we will go ahead and start moving to the back. I did cover that section with saran wrap how I did the first. So this section back here, I really take sectioning depending on how wide the section is. So of course, right at the nape, it's a little bit smaller, so I'll only do a couple pieces there, and then as it gets wider towards the back of the head, I'll take 3 sections. So I really go like 2, 3, 3, 2, 1 when I do the sections in the back, and you'll see what I mean as we go up the head. I also tend to stay a little bit darker towards the center of the head and lighter on the sides. I believe the last time I retouched Millie's hair, we did not retouch the back, we just did a partial. Here you can see that I did 3 sections for this next parting. And I don't go as high back here, I like to have a little bit more depth. I mean, you could go all the way up to the root like the front if you wanted to, but I like to have that dimension and almost a low light effect when it is all curled. The sides will definitely be higher than the center. So this section got a little bit smaller again, so I only did 2 sections here. And remember to go higher towards the sides, lower towards the back, so you can have that depth in the crown. Remember to always use good tension and to make sure you're saturating your sections enough. Very nice. Okay, I believe I only have about 2 sections to go. You can see how quickly you can really get through this if you have good organized sections and you really find your flow. I believe this is my last section and I don't want to take it too high, so I just want to be sure to get good saturation and to dust those top pieces up very lightly so it's a nice blend. All done. So I'll go ahead and add saran wrap to this last section. You can see I did leave the ends out there as well. I usually process my balayage for about 30 to 50 minutes depending on the section and how well the hair is lifting, and I do test the ends to make sure they're staying nice. Alright, here are the products I used and the toners. I stuck with Vibrant and her final result. I think it came out very pretty and I love the result of a hand painted balayage. Thanks for watching.